And we're back. Scootaloo and Cloudsdale by Tamar. After realizing that Scootaloo has never been to Cloudsdale, Rainbow Dash takes its filly to the citadel of the Pegasi, much to Scootaloo's excitement. A short sketch for Rainbow Dash and Scootaloo, gentle friendshipping. It has about 3,000 words, so it's going to be pretty long. Scootaloo and Cloudsdale by Tamar. High above Equestria, higher than the birds fly, a cyan Pegasus perched on a cloud, breathing deeply. "This is it," she whispered to herself. "Miss Rainbow Dash, fastest flyer in Equestria, is going to attempt a super-duper awesome sonic rainboom. She needs complete concentration to pull it off. As she puts on one feather out of line, it's all over." She spreads her wings slowly, unable to avoid a slight nervous quiver. "This trick was struck off by the Wonderbolts routine centuries ago, when the great Jet Flash was almost killed by attempting the maneuver. Miss Rainbow Dash knows the dangers. We need complete silence, please," as she mentally prepares herself for the challenge. Sweat beaded up on her forehead as she closed her eyes as gently as she could. Her wings, full spread, arched back, but she still held them still. In her mind's eye, she envisaged the jump, the plummet, the execution. Her mind zeroed in on the final instant of the completion, excluding all her thoughts. Then, silently, she reared up onto her hind legs, gave a powerful flap of her wings, and then closed them, diving over the edge. Icy winds raced up behind and beat her face, gathering intensity until it tore her eyes open and tugged at her rainbow mane. Her wings snapped shut to the sides, were begging to be opened. "Not yet," she growled to herself, as she plummeted faster and faster. When she had gathered enough speed, she opened her wings, gasping as they were wrenched backwards. With all the strength she could muster, she beat them, up and down, increasing her speed. She streaked ever faster downwards, a rainbow trail beginning to form behind her, and a barrier of air building in front of her. Almost there! She could physically feel the barrier pushing her back, but that was just fine. She didn't need to push back, she just had to smash through. "Rainbow Dash!" "Huh?" Rainbow Dash lost concentration, confused. Who could be calling her name? "Rainbow Dash!" Her left wing began to buffet. In an instant, it caught in a gust from the barrier of air, and she lost control, barreling outwards into a spin side that had impossible speed until surely she would. "Rainbow Dash!" Rainbow awoke with a start. "Yay, you're awake!" The voice belonged to Scootaloo, who was jumping up and down under the tree where Rainbow Dash had been napping with a wild smile on her face. Rainbow gave a groan and rubbed her forehead. "Scootaloo, what are you doing here?" "Ow! Why does my head hurt?" Scootaloo giggled. You woke up a bit aggressively, and I smacked your head up on the branch up there." Rainbow Dash glared at the offending branch and continued to rub her forehead. "What did you wake me for?" she asked, a little put out. She couldn't remember her dream, but she had a feeling she had been enjoying it. "Because you didn't look like you were sleeping very peacefully. You kept muttering to yourself about a super awesome rainbow trick." Rainbow Dash got up from her perch in the tree and fluttered down to stand in front of the purple-maned filly. "You shouldn't wake sleeping ponies," she said, giving the small Pegasus a gentle cover on the ear. "Anyway, I know you didn't just wake me up because I was having a bad dream. What was it? Actually, shouldn't you be in school?" Scootaloo shook her head. "Nope. Miss Shirley is sick today with a nasty cold, so we have the day off. I couldn't find Sweetie Belle or Apple Bloom, so I came to find you." "Came to find me?" Rainbow Dash's pride swelled slightly. "Alright then. I'm not doing anything today. The weather is scheduled to run on its natural course until tomorrow morning. What do you want to do?" Scootaloo sat down and smiled at Rainbow Dash with her enormous purple eyes. "I've no idea," she said brightly. "I knew you'd think of something awesome though." Rainbow Dash scratched her head. She hadn't expected to be tested for an awesome idea so suddenly. Well, I haven't been to Cloudsdale for a while, and I was going to see a couple of the weather ponies there about next week's rainbows. Want to tag along?" Scootaloo deflated and suddenly shifted slightly. Uh, maybe not. She gave her tiny wings a weak beat, looking at them sadly. Really? It must have been ages since you've been to Cloudsdale. I know I've been itching to go for a while. Come on, it'll be fun. Scootaloo blushed slightly and didn't look at Rainbow. Rainbow Dash was now confused. Scootaloo, have you never been to Cloudsdale? Well, no, I haven't. Scootaloo gave her wings another little flap. Never ever? Dash said incredulously. Never ever, Scootaloo replied, her ears turning back downwards. I've always lived in Ponyville, yet I can't fly yet, and no one's ever taken me, so no, I haven't been to Cloudsdale. Well, then it's settled, Rainbow Dash said firmly. You and I are going to Cloudsdale right now. I couldn't care about anything else, not until I show you how fantastic it is. It's the citadel of the Pegasi, your citadel, and you have to see it. I know, but I can't. Scootaloo didn't finish her sentence. You don't have to, Rainbow Dash giggled. She turned a glum filly's face upwards with her hoof. Why should that stop you? Rainbow Dash turned slightly and crouched down behind the Scootaloo. Right on my back till we get to Cloudsdale. Then you'll be able to walk in the clouds. Scootaloo gave an excited gasp. Her eyes filled with twinkling stars of delight. Really? Yeah, really. Now come on. The sooner we set off, the sooner we'll be in Cloudsdale. Just mind my wings and hold on to my mane. Trembling with anticipation, Scootaloo clambered onto Rainbow Dash's back, positioning herself behind the wings and taking hold of the multicolored mane. Rainbow Dash stood up and trotted forward so that she wasn't under the tree. She turned to Scootaloo and said with a wink, Ready? Ready! Thank you, sir! She didn't even finish her sentence, as in one powerful movement Rainbow Dash unfurled her wings and thrust them downwards while pushing forcefully against the ground with her hind legs. Together they leapt into the air and soared forward. Scootaloo's breath was jerked away from her as she dived forward and wrapped her hooves around Rainbow Dash's neck. This is it, she thought. I'm actually flying! Scootaloo flew up and out of Ponyville with the filly holding on as tightly as she could. Scootaloo changed the look behind her to see how her home was disappearing downwards. She could see the old schoolhouse, the library, the carousel boutique, and further off to the left was Sweet Apple Acres, a carpet of apple trees with a barn nestled in the middle. Scootaloo did her best not to look down. She knew it was silly for a Pegasus to be afraid of height, but the truth was that she had never been this high before. Instead, she closed her eyes and hugged Rainbow Dash as tight as she could, concentrating on the steady rhythm of her wing beats. For a while, she opened her eyes again and began looking back in the direction of Ponyville. It had disappeared from view, and below them was nothing but a field and trees with a large river running through them. What river is that? She called to Rainbow Dash above the wind. That's the river Equine, Rainbow Dash replied. Cloudsdale use it to ensure the citadel never evaporates. There's always a supply of water for the clouds there, no matter how hot or dry the weather is. Every few weeks, when Cloudsdale drifts off to the river, it sucks up a ton of water, which lasts until the next time it's close enough. Speaking of which, we're getting close. Can you hear the trumpets? Scootaloo trained her eyes forward, and then heard the distant sound of a trumpet fanfare lost in the wind. What are the trumpets for? They sound the trumpets to guide Pegasi to the citadel. Since it isn't attached to the ground, it floats wherever it wants. So if they didn't, the sky would be full of lost Pegasi trying to find Cloudsdale. Scootaloo giggled. Does it ever just drift away and get lost completely? It did once. They had to send out a search party, and it didn't turn up until a week later, when it almost crashed into Canterlot Castle. They asked a team of unicorns to enchant it so that it wouldn't fly off too far, but it still drifts around. They were getting close now, and the sound of trumpets filled the air. Rainbow puffed up proudly. This, she declared, is Cloudsdale. Cloudsdale, citadel of the Pegasi. It towered high above them, a fantastic construction of a thick white cloud, It seemed as though the clouds had all been thrown together at haphazard angles, with a great swirly towers rising out of the base, and falls of water and rainbows flowing down to the land below. To the far left of Scootaloo, she could see the Cloud Stadium, flags waving in the wind, and beside them was a large building with cloud pillars. "What's that thing next to the stadium?" Scootaloo asked. "Oh, that's the academy, where Fluttershy and I grew up. I'll show you my old stamping ground," said Rainbow, with a hint of pride in her voice. "And everything else there is to see in Cloudsdale." Sorry for stumbling. It seemed to Scootaloo like the single most amazing thing in all of Equestria. They were approaching the main entrance now, a great staircase of clouds capped with a grand archway. Rainbow Dash flew through the entrance and came to land beside a building adorned with titanic pillars of cloud. "Wow! What building is that?" asked Scootaloo excitedly. "That is the Council of Pegasi and Weather Ponies," Rainbow Dash answered. "All the weather everywhere is scheduled and planned here, except for the weather over the Everfree Forest." Scootaloo shuffled off of Rainbow's back and tentatively stood on the cloud. Her hoof sank a few inches into the mist and then stopped, supported by an unseen force. Scootaloo pushed the clouds about with her hoof experimentally. Rainbow Dash watched with amusement as the Pegasi filly jumped up and down in excitement and rolled about on the cloud. "Never stood on a cloud before?" Scootaloo grinned. "Never, ever! Come on then, I'll show you around." They began with Main Street, a wide street with famous shops on either side. Names like Pegasopolis, Wings, Cloud Hooves, and Edge Sky passed Scootaloo by as she wandered down the street next to Rainbow Dash, open-mouthed. Some she had heard of before, but most were completely new to her. Main Street was full of high society Pegasi strolling down the street, socializing and showing off. Scootaloo had seen the street like this before when she went with her friend to see the heartwarming play in Canterlot, but this was all just for Pegasi, which made it all so much more special. "You grew up here?" Scootaloo asked, wide-eyed with amazement, trying to put the filly Rainbow Dash amongst the all high society Pegasi and expensive brand names. "I sure did, though Cloudsdale is a big place, so we didn't come to Main Street very often. Usually, if ponies come up here, it's because they're showing off, or sightseeing like we are." Scootaloo had wanted to stop and look at every building that went by, though there just wasn't the time. She bounced along excitedly next to Rainbow Dash, turning her head left and right. Main Street led up to the Cloud Stadium. It loomed imperviously, casting a long shadow. 4 flags fluttered from the very top above the entrance. "Want to go and take a look?" Rainbow Dash asked, crouching again. Scootaloo hopped on her back, and together they rose to the level of the flags. There was no floor in the stadium. Instead, the stand simply gave way to nothingness, and a very, very long drop to the ground below. "This is where you first pulled off your amazing sonic rainbow?" Scootaloo asked, a little breathless. Rainbow Dash blushed slightly. "Well, not quite here. Rarity fell through the bottom of the stadium, and by the time I had worked up enough speed, we were quite a long way below Cloudsdale. But yeah, this is where the competition was." "I wish I could have seen it." "Maybe someday you will, kid. Someday. Who knows, maybe someday you'll make your own sonic rainbow, or a Scootaloo. Actually, forget that. That sounds awful." Rainbow Dash laughed. Scootaloo shuffled slightly on Rainbow Dash's back. "I don't think that's very likely. I can't even fly yet. Never mind do tricks, and other fillies my age are way ahead of me." Rainbow Dash began to descend to the cloud surface. "There's nothing wrong with being a late bloomer," she said simply. "You shouldn't let it worry you. The last flower to bloom can be the prettiest of all." "You really think so?" Scootaloo hopped off Rainbow Dash's back and steadied her hooves in the cloud. "I know so," Rainbow Dash said with a wink. Scootaloo felt a little better after that. They weren't allowed into the academy since it was during term time, so instead Rainbow Dash decided to take Scootaloo down to the famed Cloud Terrace while telling her about the fillyhood in Cloudsdale. Cloud Terrace was a one-sided street on the southern face of Cloudsdale. On one side there was the most expensive houses in all of the citadel, great mansions with fancy pillars and windows. But it was on the other side that made Cloud Terrace so special. On the other side, there were no buildings. The street simply gave way to the empty sky, falling to the land far below. The view looked onto the south, so the sun always shone directly on the terrace. Scootaloo could almost see as far as the everfree forest, which was easy to spot because of the freak weather patterns hovering above it. Hidden behind that was Ponyville, and a long way beyond that, Scootaloo thought she could just make out Canterlot, perfectly perched precariously on a mountainside. Scootaloo pointed endlessly into different places she could see, asking Rainbow Dash what was there, and Rainbow Dash proved surprisingly knowledgeable and well equipped for fielding her questions. At the end of the Cloud Terrace, there was a large building with 2 chimneys. "What's that?" she asked. "That's the weather factory. They have everything in there, from the top pony technicians designing new snowflakes and rainbow patterns, to conveyor belts with the fastest production rate in any weather factory in Equestria." "Awesome! Can we go inside?" "Yep. I know a few pegasi, and we should be able to have a look around it." At the door, Rainbow Dash was greeted by Yellow Pegasus like an old friend. "Hey Raindrops, how's it going?"
Not so bad, Rainbow.
Raindrops replied.
You know how it is. What brings you to the weather factory? I haven't seen you here in a while.
"I'm showing this little squirt around," Rainbow Dash replied, giving Scootaloo a playful nudge. "She's never been to Cloudsdale before."
Oh, wow!
Raindrops smiled at Scootaloo.
How exciting.
"Can you get us in to look around? We won't take long."
I don't see any reason why not. You know where the lab coats are.
"Thanks a million, Raindrops. I owe you."
Psh, you saved my feathers more times than I can count. It's the least I can do.
Scootaloo thanked the Pegasus and followed Rainbow Dash into the factory. Donning white lab coats, they went into the first room. It was icy cold, and on the observation platform, Scootaloo's breath misted in front of her. The room was full of microscopes, with pony scientists leaning over them, taking notes. "What are they doing?" Scootaloo whispered to Rainbow Dash. There was a hush in the room, and Scootaloo didn't want to break it. "They're designing snowflakes," Rainbow Dash replied. "Each one is hoof-made." "But that must take forever!" "They make them over the summer and put them in cold storage. Then, when winter comes, they take a break. But yes, they have to do work very fast," Rainbow Dash chuckled, or all the snowflakes melt before they get put away." They continued on a whistle-stop tour of the factory, looking into the rain meter, the snow mixers, the hail generators, and so on. Scootaloo found the detention center for away clouds quite funny. The final room was the rainbow mixing center. "All the rainbows have to be perfectly mixed, so that the colors blend right," Rainbow Dash explained. "It looks like a Zap apple jam," Scootaloo exclaimed. "Heh, I hadn't noticed that. Don't try it though. These don't taste anything like Zap apple jam," Rainbow Dash said. "Oh, I know. Pinkie Pie told me. Yeah." Scootaloo stuck her tongue out, and Rainbow Dash laughed again. By evening, even Rainbow Dash was tired. She sat with Scootaloo outside the Sunset Cafe, watching her enjoy an iced cherry sundae. They had been around the entirety of Cloudsdale in one day. It was an impressive feat, but the young Pegasus' energy had spurred Rainbow Dash to show her more and more to Citadel. Rainbow Dash had long finished her tea and waited patiently for Scootaloo to slurp up what was left of her sundae. When she finished, she wiped her mouth and looked up at at Rainbow Dash. "Rainbow, I just... What is it, Scootaloo?" Scootaloo trotted down around the table and hugged Rainbow Dash tightly. "Thank you so much for showing me Cloudsdale. I've never been before. I've never even walked in clouds before. And I've never been this high up before, and I can't wait to tell my friends and just... Thank you, and..." Rainbow Dash patted Scootaloo gently. "Don't worry, kid. You don't get to get emotional. I'm just glad you enjoyed it. But I think we ought to get going. The sun's about to set. Scootaloo sniffed and nodded. Come on then! Rainbow Dash crouched beside Scootaloo, allowing the filly to clamber up onto her back. Scootaloo snaked her hooves around Rainbow Dash's neck again and held on tight as with a few powerful strokes of her wings, Rainbow Dash lifted into the air. She flew up, and until they were high above Cloudsdale, the sunset was casting a deep yellow glow over the citadel, throwing long shadows behind the rainbow waterfalls. This is my favorite time to see Cloudsdale, Rainbow said to Scootaloo. Just in the sunset. He was answered by a deep, regular breathing. The filly had fallen asleep. Rainbow Dash smiled and began to fly back to Ponyville in the direction of the setting sun.